At 40 below, a man has about 3 hours. Sweat freezes inside his clothes, his fingers stop obeying him. The body starts pulling blood away from the hands and feet to keep the heart alive, and it does not ask permission. And yet, for centuries, people slept out there, on open ground, in a blizzard, with no fire. And they woke up in the morning. Not by luck, by design. On the northern plains, a winter storm does not arrive. It erases. Visibility drops to the length of your own arm. The wind does not blow, it cuts sideways, and it takes the warmth out of your clothing faster than your body can make it. No ridge, no trees, just white in every direction and a sun going down. Somewhere in that white, a 14-year-old boy lies down for his first night away from the fires of his camp. He has been told what to do. Tonight he finds out whether he listened. Understand this first. Their main source of heat was never the fire. Fire cannot hold on an open plain in a storm. The heat came from the body. And there was one mistake that killed more of them than the cold ever did. Not a missing tool, not the wrong shelter. A habit, one that feels like it should save you. I'll show you what it is. Stay to the end. The last piece is the one that explains all the others, because long before the first snow fell, they had already begun to prepare, inside their own bodies. They did not eat for pleasure in winter. They ate the way you feed a fire before you sleep. The preparation began in autumn, months before the first snow. Through the fall hunts, they ate heavily, animal fat, marrow, organ meat, and the body did what bodies do with surplus. It stored it. By December, a man was carrying his own fuel, and it burned slowly all night long without a single stick of wood. Then there was pemmican, dried bison meat pounded to powder, rendered fat poured in hot, crushed berries folded through, pressed into cakes and sealed in a hide bag with the seams filled with grease. No air, no moisture. It kept for years without cold storage. A piece the size of your palm could replace a full meal. Fat for long heat, protein for the muscle you tore that day. And the berries, chokecherry, cranberry, were never about flavor. They carried the vitamin C that kept scurvy away. Their acid helped break down all that fat, and they preserved the whole thing naturally. Making it took the entire camp. Women cut and dried and pounded the meat, rendered the fat, gathered the berries, weeks of work after a good hunt. And the arithmetic was brutal in its simplicity. How much pemmican you made in September decided how many of you were alive in February. European fur traders understood its value quickly. On the northern plains, pemmican became currency. Digesting fat generates heat, so eating before sleep was not comfort. It was lighting a furnace you would need at 3 in the morning. They never went to bed hungry. A hungry man freezes first, and once you were warm, you stopped moving. Every unnecessary motion burns fuel you cannot replace out there. Holding still for hours was a skill, taught like archery. The same fat went onto the skin, rendered marrow, spread thick on the face and hands, sealed the moisture in. Evaporation is one of the fastest ways a body loses heat, and grease stopped it. It kept skin from cracking, and cracked skin, out there, was an open door for infection. Mixed with ochre or charcoal, it became paint, and dark paint pulled warmth from a low winter sun. A mother would work it over her child's cheeks, the nose, the ears. Nothing missed. That hand on a child's face was not affection. It was armor. Traders wrote about the smell, rancid grease everywhere, and no one seemed to mind. They never understood it. Cleanliness is a luxury of the warm, and when night came, they lay down in a circle. The warmest place in that circle never belonged to the strongest man. Here is the part that sounds like a lie. The thing trying to kill them was also the thing that saved them. Snow is not cold in the way we think it is. A snowpack is mostly air, millions of pockets trapped between ice crystals, and trapped air is one of the worst conductors of heat on Earth. That is the entire secret. Snow does not warm you. it refuses to carry your warmth away. They knew this, not as physics, as fact. And on an open plain with no trees and no stone, snow was the only building material within 100 miles. So when a storm came down on them, they did not run. Running gets you nowhere in a whiteout. They started building. The simplest structure was a wall, packed snow piled into a horseshoe, the open end turned away from the wind. It did not need to be tall. It only needed to be taller than a man lying down. That changes everything. The wind passes over you instead of through you. And wind is the real killer. Wind is what strips the warm air out of your clothing. Where the drifts were deep and firm enough, they dug. A trench, a hollow, a small cave. Outside, 40 below. Inside, close to freezing. And freezing, when you're dressed for it, is survivable. The walls throw your own body heat back at you. But never seal it completely. Carbon dioxide pools in a closed snow chamber, and it kills quietly, without pain, without warning. A single opening was the difference. When there was no time even for that, a man buried himself in loose powder and left one hole to breathe through. It sounds like a grave. It works like a down blanket. One rule was absolute. Hide on the ground first. Bison robe, fur up. Your body heat melts the snow beneath you, and wet clothing at 40 below is a slow suicide. No tools for any of this. Hands, feet, and sometimes the broad shoulder blade of a bison used as a shovel. Now, the mistake I promised you. It was working too hard, sweating. Move fast in that cold and you soak your own clothing from the inside. That moisture freezes against your skin, and every layer you own stops being insulation and starts being a refrigerator. You cannot dry it, you cannot outrun it. So they built, slowly, deliberately, resting between efforts, opening their collars to vent heat before it turned to sweat. In a blizzard, hurrying is a way of dying. The same principle ran north. The Cree and the Athabascan of the subarctic built larger, more permanent snow structures. Different scale, identical physics. But on the plains, nothing was meant to last. By noon the next day, the shelter was gone, melted or blown flat or buried by fresh snow. No foundation, no trace. They were not building a house, they were building one night. And there was one more thing that snow gave them, something no one talks about. Inside those walls, the storm went quiet. That roar that had been tearing at them for hours simply stopped. In that silence, a man could think again, and panic never got its hands on him. But some nights, there was no time to build anything at all. And then they did something no modern survival manual will recommend. They lay down on top of each other. And it was the most organized thing they did all day. Not a pile. A structure. Bodies arranged in a tight ring, back to back, side to side, because every surface pressed against another body is a surface no longer losing heat to the air. 10 people lying apart are 10 separate fires going out. 10 people lying together are one fire. Over the top went a shared cover of bison hides, sewn edge to edge. Underneath it, breath and body heat had nowhere to go. The air inside could run dozens of degrees above the night outside. They were, quite literally, breathing each other warm. And through the night it turned. Whoever grew cold on the outside edge moved inward. Whoever had warmed up took their place at the rim. It happened again and again until dawn. And it happened almost without speaking. No argument, no schedule. Everyone knew the shape of it. Even the camp dogs were let into the ring on the worst nights. A dog runs hotter than a man. Nobody wasted a heat source. There was no embarrassment in any of this. None. Modesty is something you can afford at room temperature. The clothing followed the same law as the snow. It was never the hide that kept them alive. It was the still air the hide held against the skin. So the garments were cut loose, layered, deliberately roomy. Fur was worn turned inward, against the body, where it could hold thousands of tiny pockets of warm air. while the smooth leather faced the wind. The opposite of how we wear a fur coat today, and warmer by a wide margin. The belt was a valve. Loosen it while walking, and heat escapes through the collar before it becomes sweat. Tighten everything when you stop. A hood was cut to form a tunnel in front of the face, so the air reached the lungs already warmed. And the moccasins were made oversized on purpose, stuffed with dry grass or moss, wet grass thrown out, fresh grass packed in. A tight boot in that cold guarantees frostbite. Your foot has to travel inside your shoe. Now, the thing I told you at the beginning of all this, the center of that circle, the warmest place, the safest place, did not go to the strongest man. It went to the smallest child and the oldest grandmother. The strongest men slept on the outside, facing the wind. And this was not sacrifice. It was arithmetic. A people who lose their elders lose their memory. Every technique in this video existed only because someone old enough to have seen a bad winter was still alive to describe it. A people who lose their children lose everything after tonight. The strong were the only ones who could survive the edge. So the edge was theirs. The boy tried to take a place on the outside. 14, and desperate to be counted as a man. An old man moved him to the center without argument. You have not learned enough yet to be worth spending. And still, all of it, the fat, the snow, the circle, could fail in a single night. Because there was one more thing they had to survive, and it was not outside their bodies. Panic burns more heat than a blizzard ever takes. A frightened man moves. He walks when he should dig. He works when he should rest. He sweats through his own clothing and then lies down in ice. Every fatal mistake we have talked about tonight begins in the same place. Not in the weather, but in the chest. The moment a man decides he is losing. The cold does not kill people. It waits for them to make the decision that does. So they trained against that, deliberately. Boys were sent into the cold young, not to prove courage, but to learn what their own fear felt like before it ever mattered. To recognize the shaking, the impatience, the urge to do something, and to sit still through all of it. Once you have met that feeling in a controlled winter, it cannot ambush you in a real one. Songs and prayers held the rhythm through the long hours, because a man with nothing to count is a man who drifts. And there was laughter, real laughter, from men shaking with cold under a hide. It sounds impossible. It was equipment. Nobody challenged a storm to look brave. He waited. Humility in front of weather is not weakness. It is the most accurate reading of your own size. So why did they wake up? Not because of one trick. Not the grease, not the snow wall, not the pemmican. Any of those alone would have failed. They woke up because the decisions came in the right order. Eat before you build. Build before you tire. Lie down before you shiver. And never, never sleep alone. That is the whole thing. That is what all the pieces were for. The boy came out at dawn. The storm had passed sometime in the night without him noticing. The snow was flat and bright and utterly silent, and the camp was still there, every one of them. Years later, when he taught this to his own sons, he could recite every technique. But that was not what he remembered from that first night. What he remembered was the sound of other people breathing around him in the dark. We built machines that make heat. They built a way of living that made heat unnecessary. Comfort is not the same thing as capability, and somewhere along the way, without ever deciding to, we traded one for the other. So let me ask you honestly, which of these could you still do tonight if the power went out? Tell me in the comments. I read them. Next time, we go north. The Viking winter house, and how people survived a Scandinavian December inside a building with no chimney. Subscribe, and I'll see you there.